Good afternoon and welcome to the 7th edition of Catalyst for Change webinar series organized by the Northern Virginia Economic Development Alliance. I'm John Jacobs. I'm your host for this session, as I am for all the sessions in the series. We have a great discussion for you today and something we can all benefit from and learn from. I'll do as I do with each of these webinars and take you through one slide, just a few bullet points. So just give us some context to this discussion so that we have a sort of a common starting point. So let me go ahead and share my screen if I may, and we will begin. I'll show you that one slide. Just a moment, please. Okie doke. Go ahead and show this in a larger view. Great. So Catalyst for Change, that is the series Innovating for Others, How Preston's Pub Fed a Community, the title of today's session. Here's those quick stats that'll give us context. The definition, this would be relevant to this discussion, the definition of food insecurity is a lack of consistent access to enough food for an active, healthy life due to a lack of available financial resources for food at the household level. In 2020, 23% of US households experienced food insecurity versus 10% in 2019. In 28% of US households with children experienced food insecurity in June of 2020. That's 14 million children, and that's compared to 2.5 million in 2018, just 2 years prior. 2019, 38 million Americans used SNAP, which is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program by the federal government. By May, just 6 months later, that increased 17% to 45 million Americans. And lastly, 19 million Americans live in what are called food deserts. This is where a supermarket is not available within 1 mile of an urban setting or within 10 miles of a rural setting. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen. I'll introduce you to our great panel. We have Sean McNamara, owner of Preston's Pub in the city of Manassas Park, Virginia. Hector Cendejas is a program manager, family reunification program manager with Catholic Charities, and also a former council member of the city of Manassas Park. And Christopher Himes. Chris is assistant to the city manager of the city of Manassas Park in Virginia. Gentlemen, thank you all for joining us today. Let me just take you through a bit of more of a bio, if I may, for each of them. Sean McNamara's, his food service career started in his parents' deli at the age of 16. He's gone from running restaurants to opening them, including opening a pub for his parents back in 2011. Now, Sean has his own pub, Preston's Pub, which is named after himself and his father, as they both share the same middle name. Preston's has been open for 3 years as they struggled to get through the pandemic period with hard work and ingenuity. Hector Cendejas, Family Reunification Program Manager, Catholic Charities of the Diocese of Arlington, Virginia, and former council member, as I mentioned, of the city of Manassas Park, where he served in office from 2017 through 2020. During this period, Hector also served on the board of the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, amongst other leadership roles. Hector earned a BA in sociology from Georgetown University, as well as an MA in social work from the University of Southern California. And Chris Himes. Chris joined the city from the private sector, where he worked with JP Morgan Chase Card Services. Prior to this, Chris was a US naval officer for over 10 years, most of that time operating as a helicopter pilot. Chris is a 2006 graduate of Virginia Tech and also earned a master's in public administration, also from the University of Southern California, USC, well represented on this panel today. Welcome, panelists, and thanks very much. Let me begin, if I may, with Sean, and because I have to begin somewhere, but let's have a sort of an interactive discussion on this too. At the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, you decided to jump into the fray and help school children and the elderly. You did this at the same time the restaurant industry was experiencing a virtual nationwide shutdown. Why did you make this decision?
I made the decision because Preston's Pub has always been about community and been supporting the community. It also came from our name. Like you said before, I shared with my father, and unfortunately, my father did pass away right before we opened the doors. But he was the type of person that would give anything to anybody that they asked. He was always that person, whether it was just to lend an ear or to give them a hot meal or financially help them. That was what he did. I am not exactly my father's son, however that works. But I try my hardest to think like he did and try to do what he would do, as long as I don't run my business into the ground. So, but we heard that there was everything got shut down, including the schools. We heard that there was a lot of school-age children that relied on the lunches made by schools. So we wanted to jump in. We have the resources, we have the area to do it. So we wanted to provide box lunches for the kids.
And how, Sean, did you become aware of the need per se?
It was between social media, and also a lot of our regular customers were letting us know that this need was there. So, we put it out there that we were going to do this, that we wanted to do this, but that we didn't have a way to get the food directly into the children's hands. So, we started to contact the schools and the different principals and stuff like that. Problem is again, everything was shut down. They were trying to figure out how to go to virtual learning. So I wasn't really I was getting responses, don't get me wrong, but I wasn't getting any direction as to how to help. So right around that same time, Chris in the city reached out, and they had another issue with the elderly community that lives here. And so we decided to grasp onto that and get the box lunches out that way.
And tell us about the program a bit. How many meals did you serve, and for what period of time?
We were doing anywhere between 50 and 75 box lunches a week. Manassas Park was delivering food over to them once a week. I want to say that the ending numbers were somewhere between 750 and 800 box lunches that we were able to provide. It was maybe eight or 9 weeks, 10 weeks. I don't remember exactly how long the program ran.
And in the prep for this session, I remember, Chris, you saying, from a government perspective, you deployed the assets that you have, and we talked about how were the meals distributed, et cetera. Chris, can you just tell us a bit about the role that government played there?
Yeah, absolutely. And anytime that there is a kind of a disaster response or an emergency response in any local government, state, federal, usually there's kind of multiple different entities kind of arise up. There's ones where at a local level, you'll have your different emergency management type teams, your public safety responders, the state, and then the federal level, you have kind of the National Guard and the military accordingly. These are all entities that are ready to essentially go in with whatever they have, their training, and just kind of affect the situation, if you can think about that. But this one was different. This was a pandemic. We didn't necessarily have a playbook in place that said, hey, this is a highly contagious disease that affects a certain sliver of the population more so than others. So what do we do to do this? And oh, by the way, the information is not there. Nobody really knows what they really can and cannot do. So your operating environment is automatically just really constrained because you don't have the known procedures in place, or the required personal protective equipment, so on and so forth. So the list of just unknowns kind of really dictates what you can and cannot do. And in this instance, it wasn't about pulling people from a risky situation to a healthy situation, like pulling them out of water or kind of getting them from, like a dire situation to safety. This was feeding them. This was doing basic kind of, wasn't Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This was kind of, we're above shelter, we're looking for food and water and long-term supplies for our most at-risk citizens, in which case, Sean was helpful in identifying a need for the schools. The city was looking for, some of our other cutoff citizens, which was our senior assisted living facility here in the city as well. So we said, okay, we cannot provide the food, but we can provide the people and the actual logistics behind it. So you think of in terms of who's available over a full service city, We have all representative departments, of which one of them was essentially shut down, which was our community center. And that's one of the biggest departments that we have in the city from a personnel standpoint. But these are also people trained to be stewards and representative of the city. So not only is it just kind of a liquidated at your fingertips army of people that you can kind of point in the direction of what needs to be done, but they're also trusted agents in the community. And I think that's a really helpful part of all of this, is that, people see city staff with Parks and Recreation staff, t-shirts on, they're more than willing to kind of work with them as well. Plus we have vans, we have trucks, we have all the different tools that we need to distribute this. So it was mostly about what can we provide, who can help us provide those resources, who's most at risk, and then coming up with like a centralized plan to kind of, coordinate the logistics part of it, which, from a city standpoint, we play a really good role at that, because you mentioned the schools and the teachers, and well, teachers need to continue teaching. It's not like they were out of a job and looking for stuff to do to help out with the school children. It's like we had to provide that part of it as well, because they no longer had a school to go to distribute the resources. So, they're kind of constrained in and of itself. So that's kind of, I believe, at the most local level, the role of local government, because it's not like we have access to immediate funding and food and those types of resources, but we can provide people, personnel, communication, and just kind of that centralization of the strategy to get things where they need to go.
Great. And Sean, back to you for a sec, because we entitled this session "Innovating to Help Others," but that wasn't your only innovation, right? Here you're running a for-profit business, yet you identify with the community. What are some other innovations that you developed during the beginning period of COVID that really helped you get through the big wave, the big first wave of COVID?
Yeah, we did a couple different things. Very first thing was we brought in all the different delivery platforms so that we could immediately start delivering our food without having to staff everything like that. We also saw a need for people getting groceries, and so we opened up a market. Once a week, you would call in and place your order. Then I would order for my distribution, and we put it all together the next day. And it was great for people who couldn't find stuff at the grocery store or weren't comfortable going to the grocery store at that time. We also introduced family meals for people to come and pick up a one-stop shop where it was a spaghetti dinner or something like that. And then the most fun thing that we came up with, I think, was our car hop. Back in the 40s and the 50s, you would roll up to the different places. Somebody would come out on skates, put a tray on your window, and serve you food. And we figured, since that was technically to go, that we could do that. So we turned our parking lot into a car hop. We had signs, and we even had the trays. We did try the roller skates. I think that lasted about 15 minutes before my first server fell. So after that, we put the kibosh on that.
It's a lot harder than it looks, huh?
Yes, definitely.
You're serving food and on skates.
Right, exactly.
Well, that's so that's a lighthearted way of saying you solve some of the other ways of distributing to the community. They happen to be your clients in that case, but nevertheless serving that purpose. A lot of these discussions are around business incentives and value to the business, and this is maybe a crass question, but I feel like I should ask it. What is the business incentive to you to sort of pursue a philanthropic effort as you did?
Honestly, it's to get my name out there, to get Preston's Pub out there. It's to reinforce the fact that we are here for the community, and that's what we're about. Don't get me wrong, we're also about profit, but that is one of our pillars, is to make sure that we're part of the community. I don't think that it ends up giving us any financial. I don't know if there's any real financial return, but I do think that it helps with our reputation. It does help with our branding.
Just to transition to Hector for a moment, if I may. And Hector, during this period, this last year, was you're finishing your term in the council in the city of Manassas Park. What was your role in helping to facilitate this initiative or others that were similar? And so you as a councilman.
I would say that, as Chris has mentioned, a lot of the work was done by our staff. with the Senior Manager's Office and also the Department of Parks and Rec. So first of all, I want to say thank you to all of our staff members for making all the effort. As council member, our goal was to connect with other businesses within Manassas Park to see in what ways can they support us. And also many of them, they offer ways that they can help with the community. Also, our role is to spread the word with our residents who will reach out to us to see where can they receive services. But also to know Preston Pub has always been there for our community. They are part of Manassas Park. I do recall before COVID, they have fundraisers for social causes. So if you have a resident that needs support for breast cancer, you know, there was a fundraiser available at Preston Pub. So this is not something new for Preston. So I want to let that the community know about this as well.
I'm curious about the council, and you know, when the council or elected officials for the city of Manassas Park reach out to the business community, what are some of the other causes for that? What's a general reaction, and how do you know who to go to for what?
I guess since when we run for office, we do reach out to business owners, but also being a long-term resident of Manassas Park since I went to high school over here, I've had the opportunity to develop relationships with them. So I can use my phone, call them up and be like, hey, do you have food available? Do you have napkins available or any other basic needs? They're willing to donate them. So for a while, we did have a donation box available in one of our public facilities. So that's one of the ways that we were able to connect with our businesses in the city.
You know, so while being a council member for 4 years, you also kept your full-time role at Catholic Charities. Can you tell us about that role a bit with Catholic Charities?
Yes, so Catholic Charities is a nonprofit organization that serves people throughout Northern Virginia. We work in different ways, whether it's medical support, mental health support, also folks that need emergency assistance when it comes to rent support or foods. Here in the greater Manassas area, we have the St. Lucy's Project, where people are able to go to the warehouse and get food for the rest of the week. So there are different ways that we try to support our residents throughout Manassas Park and North Virginia.
And you know, it was one stat I think I captured at the beginning of this program, where in 2020, 23% of Americans experienced food insecurity. That's compared to 10% from the year before. So from 10 to 23 in a few months, actually. And you mentioned, so St. Lucy's Food Pantry or Project is one of the programs. Are there other ways that Catholic Charity tries to help on the financial side?
Yeah, so thankfully in 2020, we had a lot of people donate gift cards. Even they donated money, no strings attached, for our clients that were part of Catholic Charities. So many of the clients that I've served directly in the family reunification program received $500 with no strings attached. And that helped families, you know, use that money for food, for rent, for diapers, and for other needs. So I really, really thank all those donors that went above and beyond in 2020 when there was a high need of support for many families that are low income or limited with resources.
And just to sort of segue over to Chris for a second, Chris, part of your portfolio is economic development. And, you know, whenever I speak with economic development folks, a lot of that is attracting and retaining businesses in the community. But I'm curious about what your experience has been with corporate volunteerism amongst the business community that you have in Manassas Park.
Yeah, so corporate volunteerism is one where you need to kind of look at who has that capability in the first place, because it's one point to have those kind of corporate ambassadors like, you know, Preston's and Sean, the work he's doing there and being proactive on his own account, you know, but when you try to scale that up, you would need a buy-in from the entire kind of restaurant retail community that we have here in the city of Manassas Park, and we have other businesses as well, but they would all need to act individually in the aggregate to be able to create a very robust corporate volunteerism type, I would say, program here in the entire city. So you have to look at, we always talk about the different sectors. You really have to lean on the nonprofit sector as the most viable group that can provide that long-term sustainable corporate kind of philanthropy or responsibility type of standpoint. So, it's awesome that we have, like a Preston's Pub and other organizations doing their singular campaigns, but, Hector, name it, the charitable type organizations, ones that are more oriented towards long-term sustainability, those are ones that you also have to kind of tap into. So any strategy should probably really include both, in my personal opinion, because that's where you get the most amount of outreach. Because while some people might not know that we do have like the St. Lucy's project located right next door and has a gigantic distribution kind of a risk. But if you go on Yelp and you get thousands of reviews of Preston's, it's like, okay, well, that does have a lot of visibility. So how do you bridge that gap? How do you combine that? How do you make that something to where the entire community understands? And that's where it comes to messaging and communication and kind of bringing those entities towards local government. And we can help provide that platform because we have access to multi-directional channels for social media. We have council members who are trusted members and representatives of their individual neighborhoods within our community. We have restaurant and retail owners that get not just in-city clients, but out of the area type clients, you name it. So it really needs to be this kind of holistic approach to volunteerism and philanthropy to have what I would consider to be a successful program. So anything that short sights that, I think, is you're coming up a little bit shy of what you're trying to do.
I mentioned that working with economic development offices as I do, and this idea of attracting these sort of high value businesses. What's the targeting certain industries? So is that something that you do in Manassas, City of Manassas Park, or you have a list of types of industries that you try to attract, or not?
So we have to basically look at sectors that are market viable for our city and our community specifically. So right now you have to look at what land uses are in place for the city of Manassas Park, and we're small. We really have to be strategic in what we're looking for long term, because once we give up a property or move it, that's a big chunk for us. We can't just necessarily go to the next site. So you look at what creates the most amount of resiliency. We kind of saw that during COVID. I believe the numbers spiked up. We were roughly around 2.5% in 2019 in terms of unemployment. Now went up to about 12%, which was, I think, slightly lower than the national average, but pretty high overall for Virginia. And we consider ourselves to be a pretty strong business state. And that's concerning, because you think of, well, what risks are your citizens at or exposed to because of the I would say, resilient opportunities that are located in your own backyard. So we look at our local land uses. We have like a roughly 200-acre kind of industrial park. It's very, very compartmentalized with these individual type kind of repair, small, light manufacturing type businesses. They've been around for a while, but what types of opportunities are they really creating for, you would say, a more sustainable at scale volume of potential? If you are a person graduating from high school, what is the opportunity for you to kind of go into almost like a pipeline, grow into that from where you grew up, and be provided with a sustainable kind of well-paying type job coming out of the city, or some kind of trades-based certification, and that you can also live where you work. So we're looking at those types of businesses. Of course, we exist in Northern Virginia, so everything is about competing for those like high level, defense, manufacturing, those high level technology, government partnership type agencies. But there are levels down below that to where you have massive logistical supply chain groups out there that need industrial spaces that do have those types of opportunities, to where if something were to pop up again, another pandemic or another type of almost forced recession, I guess, what we also saw economically, These industries tend to be a little bit more resilient and provide a little more backup, and they're not demanding a ton of space or a ton of different, massive corporate investment for like a new headquarters or something, which would just not be available to City of Manassas Park because, we're small. But I think if I remember right, 200 acres that's roughly 13% of our city, so that's
So you shared that it's the
Yeah.
entire city is 2.5 square miles?
Correct, yeah.
Right. So it's not, a Loudoun
We
land.
do have a Loudoun County asset or anything where we can just continue going west and southwest and continue building into available real estate.
Right. It's interesting. I looked at the demographics of your city, and Hispanic and Black families experienced almost double the rate of food insecurity toward the end of last year, reaching 40% nationally, 40% of that cohort. And Manassas Park has a large minority population. I think I wrote 41. So large minority representing 41% of the overall residents. Did you have that sense of vulnerability? Was the weight of that just very obvious? And were there actions that you had to take particularly for those segments of the population?
So when we responded, of course, we had a kind of all citizen-based approach to that kind of distribution of resources. You name it, but also from just a small business perspective, I do believe those unemployment numbers were kind of at that same larger representative scale of unemployment amongst those populations of which we have them in our city. So when you, like I was saying before, when you do have opportunities to grow better industries that aren't as at risk from an economic collapse or some sort of event to where these people would be, out of a job, or they currently might be comfortable with it, but we saw that that's something that can change pretty quickly. So, with a lot of potential investment for growing the local Northern Virginia market, we are actively looking to grow that level of resiliency in our city because we want to provide those better, more resilient jobs for our citizens, regardless of the perception of the city. We want to be kind of a more forward-thinking organization here. So yeah, absolutely, we are trying to find those types of businesses.
Great, and to close the loop back to Sean, so that was a few months ago, these innovations. It's been a while now. How's Preston's Pub doing now? What's your world like?
We're still here. We made it through, or we've made it up to this point. Everything's been going great. Now that the weather has finally turned, we were able to utilize our patio where more people feel comfortable being. So all of our numbers are getting very, very close to what they used to be. So it's very promising. It's a very good time, and we're thankful to still be here.
And I mentioned at the top, when you started in 2011 opening a restaurant for your parents, and that restaurant's still open. I'm sorry,
Yes.
What was the name of that restaurant?
That's the Main Street Pub down in Clifton, Virginia.
Down in Clifton. Okay, great. Well, gentlemen, thank you all. Thanks to the panel. Thanks to the audience as well for joining us today. This webinar will be on the novaeda.org.org website. It will be available by tomorrow morning. And I wish you all a great rest of your afternoon. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.